What it really does in your body. 30 days. Most people have already heard about antioxidants. They appear on labels, advertisements, and health conversations as if they were a universal solution: vitamin C, vitamin E, polyphenol, detox. But there is a huge difference between consuming antioxidants and having a functional antioxidant system, and this difference is almost never explained. Before talking about what can happen over 30 days using NAC, it is essential to understand how the human body actually protects itself, not in theory, but in practice. The human body is not fragile. It was designed to handle challenges. The problem is not stress itself, but the continuous and cumulative exposure to stimuli for which the body never had time to adapt. Today, we are constantly exposed to invisible chemical residues, air pollution, trace metals, food additives, chronic medication use, persistent intestinal inflammation, sleep deprivation, and constant psychological stress. This creates a silent condition known as chronic oxidative overload. The body does not collapse suddenly. It tries to compensate, and that compensation happens inside the cell. Almost all vital reactions in the body happen intracellularly. Inside the cell, food becomes energy, oxygen is used, tissues are renewed, hormonal signals are interpreted, and the immune system is organized. That is why most oxidative stress occurs inside the cell. Most antioxidants act outside the cell or struggle to cross cellular barriers. Glutathione does not. Glutathione is not just a free radical neutralizer. It regulates the intracellular chemical environment, protects mitochondria, recycles other antioxidants, and plays a central role in detoxification systems. Without sufficient glutathione, the body continues to function, but with a reduced safety margin. It is like driving a car with a compromised cooling system. It still runs, but every extra effort costs more. A glutathione deficiency does not create an obvious symptom like pain or fever. Instead, it appears as slower recovery, unexplained fatigue, increased sensitivity to stress, exaggerated reactions to food, supplement intolerance, irregular digestion, and more reactive skin. Individually, these signs rarely raise concern. Together, they indicate that the internal protection system is being overloaded. The body wants to produce glutathione. It depends on it. The limitation is not intent, but raw material. To produce glutathione, the body needs 3 amino acids, and the first one to become deficient is usually cysteine. Cysteine is the limiting factor. Without it, the process stops even if all other components are available. Cysteine exists in food, but it is highly reactive. Between ingestion and reaching the cell, much of it is oxidized, diverted to intestinal repair, or used to build structural proteins. The intestine renews itself constantly and consumes large amounts of sulfur-containing amino acids. In practical terms, very little cysteine remains available for glutathione production. NAC does not directly create glutathione. It solves a specific bottleneck, delivering functional cysteine inside the cell. The acetylation of NAC protects the sulfur group, allowing it to survive digestion, avoid premature oxidation, and cross cellular membranes. Once inside the cell, this protection is removed, and the body uses cysteine according to its physiological needs. Nothing is forced. Nothing is artificially accelerated. Active NAC has a characteristic sulfur odor. This smell indicates that the sulfur group is present and functional. When NAC has no smell, it often suggests oxidation, chemical modification, or reduced biological activity. After ingestion, it leaves no residual taste. The odor appears only when opening the bottle. Oxidation itself is not disease. The body uses it to produce energy, fight pathogens, adapt to exercise, and signal biological processes. Suppressing oxidation excessively is as harmful as allowing too much of it. The body depends on a dynamic redox balance. Antioxidants exist to modulate, not eliminate this process. Chronic use of high doses of NAC can reduce essential cellular signaling, interfere with physiological adaptation, and reduce stress resilience. That is why intelligent use prioritizes stability, not immediate effects. There is a clear difference between supporting the body and trying to control it. When used correctly, NAC supports an existing system. It does not replace the body or create artificial pathways. It simply removes a bottleneck. Today, compared to the past, we face higher toxic loads, more fragile gut health, greater baseline inflammation, and less dietary diversity. What was once sufficient often no longer is. NAC helps restore a margin of safety, not overstimulation. The body responds better to consistency than to spikes. Small, regular inputs support glutathione production, respect feedback mechanisms, and avoid paradoxical effects. The goal is not to feel something. It is to function better without noticing. The real question is not, what supplement fixes everything? The right question is, what allows my body to maintain balance in an imbalanced environment? After understanding how NAC works behind the scenes of cellular physiology, the natural question is what this actually means in real life, in a real body, day to day. It's important to be clear from the start, NAC is not a stimulant. It doesn't create an immediate sensation, it doesn't artificially boost energy, and it doesn't produce dramatic effects overnight. When changes occur, they tend to be subtle, progressive, and systemic. That's exactly why many people only notice the benefits when something that used to happen regularly stops happening. One of the first systems to benefit from more stable glutathione production is the body's detoxification capacity. The liver is constantly working to neutralize metabolic byproducts, hormones that have already done their job, environmental chemicals, and inflammatory residues. When this system is running at its limit, the body doesn't shut down, it begins to accumulate reactive intermediates. With better glutathione support, detoxification becomes more efficient, fewer of these intermediates accumulate, and there is less inflammatory spillover into peripheral tissues. Over time, some people notice digestion becoming more predictable, less heaviness after meals, improved food tolerance, and fewer unexplained reactions. These changes are gradual, but they reflect a body operating with less internal friction. Another important shift involves systemic oxidative stress. Free radicals are produced constantly, and that's normal. The issue arises when the body's ability to neutralize them can't keep up. With more stable glutathione availability, there tends to be less cumulative oxidative damage, fewer disruptions to cellular signaling, and a reduction in low-grade, background inflammation. This doesn't mean complete protection from stress. It means better management of the chemical wear and tear that happens every day. Many people describe this as greater stress tolerance, fewer emotional or physical crashes after difficult days, and faster recovery from overload. This improved balance also affects mitochondrial function. Energy production is an oxidative process that happens inside the mitochondria. When the internal cellular environment is unstable, energy production becomes less efficient and generates more reactive byproducts. When oxidative balance improves, mitochondria tend to produce energy more cleanly, sustain output longer, and reduce sudden drops in energy. This doesn't feel like stimulation or excitement. It feels like steadiness. Less burnout. Fewer energy crashes. Physical recovery is another area where changes may appear. Exercise is a healthy stressor, but it still generates inflammation, oxidation, and microdamage. With better intracellular antioxidant balance, recovery after physical stress often becomes more efficient. Inflammation resolves more smoothly, adaptation improves, and the body returns to baseline faster. This is especially noticeable in people over 40, those with chronic inflammation, or individuals who feel that recovery takes longer than it used to. The nervous system may also benefit indirectly. Neurological regulation depends on finely tuned chemical processes, including methylation. Neurotransmitters must be produced, used, and then turned off. When this regulation is inefficient, people may experience difficulty shutting down at night, persistent mental alertness, or shallow sleep. With improved internal regulation, some people notice a calmer mental state, reduced sympathetic activation in the evening, easier transitions into sleep, and deeper, more continuous rest. This is not sedation. It's regulation. Another often overlooked effect involves the body's barrier systems. The body is made up of multiple protective interfaces: the skin, the digestive lining, and the respiratory tract. These surfaces are constantly exposed to environmental stress. NAC has a well-known ability to modulate mucus viscosity, which can lead to thinner, more functional secretions and improved airway comfort. At the same time, reduced oxidative damage allows barrier tissues to regenerate more effectively, decreasing unwanted permeability and secondary inflammation. Some people notice easier breathing, more regular digestion, and fewer vague discomforts that are hard to explain but easy to feel. It's also important to understand why not everyone feels obvious effects. Some people already have relatively balanced systems. Others have lower oxidative burden. In some cases, absorption is limited, or there are individual metabolic constraints. Sometimes the issue isn't a lack of NAC, but difficulty processing what it provides. There is also a subgroup of individuals who are more chemically sensitive. These people may react to very small changes and feel effects at doses others barely notice. For them, less is often more. A reaction is not a sign of effectiveness. Stability is. One of the most common mistakes is expecting dramatic sensations. NAC does not create an immediate feeling of energy or clarity. It improves the internal environment. And when the environment improves, the body does its job more efficiently. Sometimes the first sign is simply realizing that daily stress feels more manageable. It's also important to understand what NAC does not do. It does not replace healthy habits. It does not correct poor nutrition. It does not neutralize chronic toxin exposure on its own. It is not a standalone solution. It is one component within a much larger system. 30 days is not enough to transform the body, but it is enough to observe trends, evaluate tolerance, and notice subtle yet consistent changes. It's a period of observation, not a final judgment. The most honest question isn't whether NAC changes everything. The real question is whether it reduces the silent wear and tear on the body. For many people, the answer is yes. When the body works with less internal friction, it doesn't need to send loud signals. It simply works better. If this content brought clarity about how the body really works, like the video, share it with someone who cares about their health, and subscribe to the channel. Here, the goal is to help you understand the body's signals before they turn into problems.